Just waiting for the stream to come on. All the lights are showing. Yes, this appears to be on live. Hello, coders. Welcome to another day of live streaming in the morning. I'm just moving my tea here. Apologies. Today we're going to be focusing on the build of the invoice saving routines. So the invoice saving routines is slightly different from the customer saving routines and the status saving routines that we've created because we need to deal with foreign keys. We have an invoice which is connected to a customer and connected to a status, and we also have the association of the invoice items, which we'll be talking about later in possibly future streams maybe, but this is what we're going to be dealing with today. So very similar in the sense of yesterday and the day before, where we are creating Codeception TDD tests to test the database for the saving, but this time we need to handle whether or not there is a customer and whether or not there is a status associated to that invoice. This, of course, is the How to Code Well live stream where I'm creating the invoicing application for FreeCodeCamp, and this invoicing application will be used by me to teach object-oriented programming using no libraries and no frameworks, apart from, of course, the Codeception framework and the libraries that are required there for testing. We're using MySQL and we're using Docker as well. I've created all those bits and pieces already, and I want to start today by just taking a look at the browser, because yesterday I mentioned that there was an issue that was raised. I'm just going to bring that over here, move this over there. So this issue was raised, and it's a problem where the bind mounts weren't working with the whole Docker Compose thing. Amid Kar has mentioned this, and I tried as much as I possibly could do last night to replicate it. I'll scroll down and I'll show you. So 12 hours ago, this is what I wrote. I did honestly try. I tore everything down. I deleted all the stuff. I then span it up again. So I deleted the Docker machines, as you can see here. I created the machine. I then built all the Docker containers and so forth. The first time I did this, I should mention this, the first time I did this, it did fail, and that is because my version of VirtualBox that I used for the virtual machines was out of date, and it needed to be upgraded to version 6.010. So I did that. I also upgraded other things as well, which possibly could have had an impact. So I upgraded Xcode. I'm using an iMac here. Of course, Amid Khan is using, I think it was Ubuntu. So I can't replicate it from a one-to-one point of view. So I did that. I noticed that there was an issue with the bind mounts at that point. So I upgraded the VirtualBox and I upgraded the Xcode and other various things on the iMac. Then I spun it up again and those worked. So what I did is I tore everything down and I started it from scratch, restarted the whole machine, brought it back up again, so restarted the whole iMac, brought it up again, ran this same test, deleted the containers, built the containers, and then I just for safety measures I just ran the unit tests, and everything worked okay. I did that 3 times. Just because I thought there was some sort of trickery going on. I did that 3 times and I wasn't able to replicate that issue. So this is a problem. This is one of those things where I can hold my hands up and say, well, it works on my machine. But I would be very interested if anybody else is seeing the same problem, because obviously if there's more than just one person seeing this problem, then there is a fundamental problem here. Yeah, my suggestions is to try and upgrade everything on your system as much as you possibly can do that relate to virtual machines, hypervisors, and all of that good stuff around Docker. So I just wanted to discuss this first before we got into the code. I'm going to leave this open in case anybody else has this issue, and if they do, please can you use this as a thread. Amilcar has also added a Stack Overflow post, which I am also looking at as well, to see if anybody else is getting this issue, because if there is sort of a little fix that I'm unaware of, that someone mentions in the Stack Overflow post here, then I will certainly mention it on this thread. And of course, if this thread, if nobody else sees this issue, then I'll close this thread eventually. But for now, though, I'll just keep this open. Okay, okie dokie. So let's get into some code. So that's the right button. Okay. So excuse me. So this morning I created the Docker machine, pretty much like I just mentioned here, and I've just ran the acceptance test to make sure that they run. Yesterday, what we did, if I scroll to tests, we created an acceptance test for the customer entity. That's what we did. That's what we did here. Now I still, looking at the IDE here, they're still blue and green, so I do need to commit those. So I do apologize for not committing those. But today we're going to be adding the Invoice DB Invoice entity test, which will require a change to, in the manager, the Invoice manager. They will have a save routine in here. So that's what we're going to do. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. Let's just make sure that these are committed correctly in the right places. Let's just come out of this container, like so. Let's do a git status. Actually, let's just do a git branch. Where am I? I'm on 51 customer DB test. That seems fine. Let's do a git status. Sorry, a git status. Let's bring that up a little bit. Okay, so we have all of these. We got new files and we've got modified files. Okay, so I'm going to do a git add of the new files here. So that is src manager, customer manager, src manager, customer manager, and there was one more. There was customer test. So it was tests, acceptance test, and it was DB customer entity test. Okay, we're going to add those. I'm going to do a git status just to make sure that they are done. They appear to be in. These are okay. So now I need to do these. Ugh, I did the wrong ones, I think. So these are manager status manager. And tests acceptance DB, status entity sest. Okay, let's just do a git status again. There we go. They're all now nice and yellow. So let's do a git commit of all of this, -m, and this is adding customer DB test, like so. Then we do a git, we do a hub pull request -p, I must remember the p, and then we go into insert mode. This is Vim, of course. This closes, or fixes I should say, hyphen, and I think it was 51, and we're going to come out of that, right, and quit this, and that should push it up hopefully, and give me a link. Yep, awesome. Brilliant. So let's go back to the browser here. Let's go back to here. This is what I should have done at the end of the last stream. Okay, that's cool. Fixes 51. Merge that in. Confirm the merge. And there we go. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to delete that branch. And today we're going to go into the issues here. And we're going to have a look at the invoice. So we've created the invoice manager, but we also want to deal with the testing. So I'm going to create a new issue. So this is create invoice database insert update test. Okay, this also, yeah, I'm going to assign that to myself, and I'm going to create a label, model layer, MySQL, all those good things. That's cool. Submit that. Which number is this? 53. So we're going to go back into the code here like we've done before. I'm just going to do a git checkout of master. We're going to do a git pull because we're going to bring those changes that we've just pushed up. We're going to do a git branch -d to delete that branch, although I can't remember what the branch was called. So let's do a git branch to see what branches are available. There we go. Git branch. We're going to delete, just to keep these things nice, we're going to delete 51, customer db test. Okay, now we're going to do a git checkout -b, and this is going to be 53 invoice db test. My keyboard is below my microphone, so that's why I'm looking sort of down here. Okay, so we're going to check that out. Okay, cool. Okay, so it's going to be a little similar to what we did yesterday. I'm going to just grab that. I'm going to copy this one, and I'm going to paste this in here. This is going to be called the DB invoice entity sest. Like so. Just bring this, whoopsie, this way. DB, invoice entity sest. DB, this is invoice. Entity insert. We're not going to worry too much about the update at the moment. We will do later, but not at the moment. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to instantiate a new invoice. Okay, the second thing we need to do is instantiate an invoice manager. Like so. Let's just make sure that the, yeah, that's fine. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we can start filling out the invoice. We can start populating that. So let's do set. See where we got set customer and set status. Let's cover those later. First of all, let's do all the other bits apart from that, as well as the items. So let's do set the VAT. The VAT is a, I think I've got it set as a float. So let's just do one. Yeah, let's just do one for now. Let's just keep it nice and simple first of all. Just because I've got a suspicion there's going to be problems with the field types of the MySQL database. So I'm just going to keep it nice and simple to begin with. So set reference, this is going to be test reference. And then what else can we do? Set the date created and date updated they get added automatically by MySQL. The status, also the ID, the VAT we've done, customer and status we're going to wait, items we're going to wait, and that's it. Okay, so that's cool. Excuse me. Okay, so now what we can do is we can check that these particular things are acceptable. So we change that to be the invoice table in voice, like so. Like that. And this is going to be VAT. That is going to be get VAT. This is going to be total. And this is going to be get total. This is going to be reference, and this is going to be get reference. Okay, so this is a very basic test here. The problem with this, can you see that's highlighted here? That's because we don't actually have the save routine in here. So if I hover over this, it says method call uses one parameter, but method signature uses 0, because we haven't actually set this up. So this is going to fail, which is fine. This is what we want to do. We want to make a failing test first. So we're going to copy that group, and then we're going to go into the container, which should be, if I go up, that one. And then we can do this. So we're going to run the acceptance test using that group, and that should fail, which it does. Okay, good. And it should fail because we don't have a save routine in here. And also it will fail because we aren't actually passing in the connection. But that's not fatal for some reason. I don't think it is with PHP. So what we do here then is we go into the manager, we go into the invoice manager. We need to have a save routine. I also am going to add a constructor method. I'm going to copy the constructor method through from here. Now there is a lot of code duplication. There is an awful lot of code duplication across these managers, and I know this, and I will be tackling this, but let's just get the tests working, because once we get the tests working, we can then have something that we have a benchmark, and then we can look at refactoring this later. There's always a risk, a temptation of refactoring early, and refactoring early is a good thing. I don't want to take that away. Refactoring early is a good thing, because you don't want to do a load of code and then suddenly have to do a massive amount of refactoring. But I think you need to have something tested before you can refactor it to some point, to some degree. It certainly helps, especially when we're doing these integrations where we're actually integrating the database to the PHP. That certainly helps. So anyway, enough of my rambling. Let's just copy that in. So this is the constructor here that we've just added. We're also going to copy the save routine here, and we'll modify it to be the invoice manager. Like so. Okay, let's just drag this out and make a little bit of room, because this is going to get quite big, I think, in terms of like line length. So let's just make that, whoa, too small. That's about right. Okay, just going to take a slurp of my tea and then we'll tackle this. So let's change all of these things, because this needs to be the invoice. Invoice, that I can't spell. That also needs to be the invoice as well. And that needs to be, okay. That needs to be changed to invoice as well. That's the table name. Same with the update routine, although we won't worry about the update yet. This is all common stuff. Again, needs to be refactored out. But the specific query will be changed, obviously, depending on this. So first of all, let's work on what we're going to get. So we're going to get the reference, we're going to get the total, and we're going to get the VAT. And I can also copy these across to here. Again, there's a lot of duplication here. In both cases, in all cases, in fact, in the customer and the status. So this is another thing that we need to refactor is, why are we setting this once? We should just have a routine that just does the query, and then we have another routine that handles the parameters, and then, that is altered depending on whether we're saving or updating. So yeah, big code smells going on here. Okay, so then we can set the reference here. So we do reference. We also do total, and we do VAT here. VAT. Same with this. Again, it's very similar. Reference, total, and VAT. Okay, now I just want to double check a couple of things because I do think this might break. Let's just bring this out to see the other file. So I'm just going to take a look at the schema of the invoice, because now we're dealing with a table that has foreign keys. So let's just have a look. So we're going to import the reference, the total, and the VAT. Status is an init, and it is not null. So this is going to break because we can't insert. We can't insert an invoice without that. So that's going to be an interesting breakage. Customer can be null. Okay, so that's going to be tricky. Okay, and then these get set by standard. I think first of all, I think this will fail. So let's run this and see what the error message is. So let's open that up. And the reason why I think it's going to fail is because we haven't got a status here. But nonetheless, let's give it a go. So let's run this again. And interestingly, it passed. I thought that would fail. Okay, that's interesting. Let's have a little look. Let's go into the MySQL container, I guess. So this is db _test, and we're going to go in as MySQL -u and then -p, -u root, sorry, and then -p. Put in the password, hopefully. Yep. We're going to use the invoice. Is it test invoice app? Test invoice app. Yep. We're going to show. I'm just going to do the show tables first, just to give me a little bit of confidence. Show tables, and then we're going to select all from invoice. Okay, so that added it through. I think it's because I haven't added a foreign key constraint to the status, but that's fine. That's okay for this point. Excuse me. So whoops, sorry. So we've got the ID here, which is 1. We have the reference that we've added, the total, the VAT, the status, the customer ID. These are both null. That's okay. And we have the date created. Date created and the date updated is null because we haven't updated it. It'll be set when it gets updated, and that gets set automatically through the database. Wonderful. Okay, that's cool. Things are going in the right direction. Okay, so let's go back to the tests here. Let's also test that we can actually update this thing as well. So I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna paste it down here. And this is going to be an update to test. And we're going to do update. We're going to test update reference. We're going to run this, actually just do test reference. And what we're going to do, so we're going to save it. And that should be saved as saved. That should return an entity, I should say, so as saved entity. And that should also return the ID. So what we can do at this point is we can see that the ID is in there. So we can do ID is equal to saved entity get ID. Also, after we've done this, we can then manipulate the saved entity. So I'm going to do saved entity is equal set reference. We're going to manipulate that to test updated reference. that I can't spell. Let's just copy that in for ease. And then that's fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it again. So I'm going to do save of this, of the saved entity. There's no need to worry about that. And then I'm going to see in the database. So this is going to insert it, then it's going to get it, then it's going to save it again, and it's going to change the reference. So we can just do saved entity of all of these things, like so. And that will check whether or not test updated reference has been updated. So we add it in here, so we insert it at this point, and then we update it at this point. So let's save that. Let's come out of this container. Let's just make sure that I've updated that group. Yeah, I have. So then let's go into the web container. Let's then run this, but change the group from insert to update. Run this, and hopefully, yeah, that worked. Wonderful. Okay, so so we're now updating. Okay, we need to do a little bit more to this, of course, because, like I said, that there are statuses and there are customers. So we need to make sure that we have these things in play. So what I'm going to do, let's first of all work on the status. So we're going to copy this. Yeah, that's copied. So, oops, sorry, let's just sort that out. Let's Control Z that back. Did that? That is the update test. Yep, cool. Copy that. This is going to be insert. This is going to, let's do insert with status test. So invoice entity insert with status. Okay, so at this point we need to have a status. We need a status in there. So what we can do, and I mean I know that this is now turning into quite a lengthy test here, but you know, this is testing the integration, the acceptance of all of this stuff. Hello, Larry Chan One. Hope you're well. What are you coding on today? Are you working on anything awesome code-wise? What kind of languages do you work on? Hello to all the coders who are watching, I should say, to this this stream. I do appreciate you watching and following along. If you've got any questions, of course, as I go through this, then please let me know. Yeah, I hope everybody is having a awesome morning. It's 8:04 British summertime, so 8 in the morning here, which is why I'm drinking tea like a trooper. to try and wake me up. I did get up a little bit later today than usual. Usually it's sort of 6 in the morning type o'clock. I say usually, it depends on what I'm doing, of course. So, okay, insert with status test. This is cool. Okay, so we've got that. We need to add the status. That's what we need to do. So we need to create that. So we're going to create a status. Again, this is, I do realize this is extremely lengthy, but this is an integration test. I know I've called it an acceptance test, but really it's an integration test. So we need to do, we're going to create a new status. We're going to do status is equal to new status. We're going to set that as the entity, copy that. And we're obviously going to set the name. This is going to be, let's just call this temp status, or just temp. We're going to set the internal name to this. Set internal name. We're going to have this as an uppercase thing, and we're going to have that as a lowercase thing. Whoopsie. There we go. We don't need to have that at all. Then we're going to save this, so we need to copy that. No, we don't. It's this thing we need. We need to copy this. All of these three, actually. And at this point, we're going to save that as saved status. So that's going to put that in. Oopsie, fat fingers, copy that, put that in, change this to be the status manager. So we put in the PDO connection into this in here, that gets injected into the manager. Then we save that status, okay? That means that we have that as an entity, which means that when we go and create our invoice, we're going to do set status, and we can pass in the saved status that we've just passed in, which is this one here. We don't need to worry about all of this stuff. We'll just set this as standard, the VAT and the total and the reference, whatever. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to create a new manager for the invoice manager, and we need to save that entity. Let's just, for argument's sake, let's just make this a little bit more explicit. So let's do an invoice. I mean, it was okay to have this called as entity when you were only dealing with one thing, but now we're dealing with multiple entities, so it's probably best to call them as they are. Okay, so now we see in the database that we have the VAT, we have the total, we have the reference. This is saved invoice. But the most important thing here is that we have the status ID is the same as get status. Now we could either get the saved status and get the ID off of there, or what we should be able to do, of course. Oh, sorry, I've gone a little bit too far here, haven't I? Yeah, we don't need this. We don't need any of that. Sorry, that's what was confusing me. What we could do is we could then do get and then the ID here. But let's just use saved status and get the ID. Okay, so right, now I know that this is going to fail horribly, and the reason why it's going to fail horribly is because that isn't wired up, and there is a bit of a complication here, because what we're doing is we are assuming at this point we are going to be dealing with that status ID, and we're not. All we're doing here is we're setting the object, which means that in the manager, for the invoice manager, I'm going to have to somehow find that there is a status with perhaps the instance of the status, pull out the ID, and then save that in. So the manager is going to get a little bit more complicated compared to the other things that we've been dealing with. Okay, so let's run this. So this is db entity insert with status. And like I said, I'll say this before I run this. Like I've said, I am completely and utterly making this up as I go along. This isn't something that I'm not following any kind of framework here. There's no framework involved. I've basically building this framework myself. So I might find later on in future streams that I've come up with a better way of doing this. You know, if anybody's seen the streams where I did the routing, you'll see that I altered and changed various things in the mechanisms for that. But anyway, let's just run this and see. Before I do, however, let's just do a quick recap. So what we're doing here is we are inserting a new invoice with a status. We are creating the status, we're saving that status to the database. We are then creating an invoice, and we're setting the status entity that we've just saved to the invoice here. Then what we're doing is we're creating a new connection for the invoice manager, and we're saving that whole invoice entity. And we are hoping that we will be able to see in the database, in the invoice table, that we have the VAT, the total, the reference, the ID, as we've had before, but this is the most important thing. This is the status ID. Now I know that there isn't anything in the manager that will wire this up, so this will probably fail, which it has, because of those reasons I think I've just mentioned. So let's just double check this. Let's do debug. Yes, so this running in debug, you get the queries that come back. That codeception is running. So it's trying to look for a status, and it can't. Don't worry about the deprecated warnings here. That's okay. So no matching records found for criteria. It's trying to look for the status ID of the ID of 4, and it can't. Yeah. Thank you very much for following Larry Chen1. I think I said Chan before. I do apologize. Chen1. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I believe you are I'll have to check the numbers, but I believe you are the 50th follower, which is super cool. So big high five there. Thank you very much for following along. If you haven't seen the previous streams, this is stream number 31. So we went incredible depth in terms of like the view and the controller and all of that good stuff for this framework that we are building, for this invoicing application that we're building, and the idea, the plan is, well, FreeCodeCamp got in touch with me and said, hey, do you want to do a PHP OOP course for us, because we've seen that you've done them before on your How to Code Well YouTube channel, and they're pretty awesome. And I said, sure thing. And then that got the cogs working, and we've just come up with this plan of building an invoicing application, because when I did my original PHP OOP course, there wasn't really anything in terms of like an application that we were building, any kind of examples. It was just, these are the fundamentals of object-oriented programming. It didn't really show you what you can do with it in the sense of this is a real-world application. So that's the plan. We're going to build this invoicing application, and I'm going to use this as a platform, if you will, to then demonstrate the object-oriented programming principles, some design patterns, and all of that good stuff. Now, I do realize here I'm talking about object-oriented programming, and we are dealing with a MySQL database. So I do appreciate that there is a little bit of an overlap here. You don't necessarily need to care about MySQL databases to understand object-oriented programming. However, because I needed to have this system in place, I need to actually build this. So these streams are demonstrating the build process of this application. These streams won't be the course. The course will be something I'm going to do separately. I'm going to give it to FreeCodeCamp. And there will be a website that I'm building in Gatsby.js that will demonstrate this. I'll talk about all of that in the later part of this stream, I think. Let's just get on and crack on with the code. Otherwise, I'll just ramble. So, okay, status ID. This is the problem here. So the problem is in the invoice manager. We are not wiring up the status ID at all. Can you see? There's nothing going on here. Nothing at all about the status at all. Excuse me. And really what we need to do is something like this. We need to pass in a fourth parameter where we have entity, get status, and we can pull out the get ID, something like that. Why this is coming out like that, I'm not too sure. Let's just see. That should have come out as a status. Let me just check that. That's coming back as null. Why is that null? Null. Customer is null. That is also null. I think it's because, yeah, it needs to be a null or it needs to be a status. Like so, yeah. There we go. Scroll. Where did I set that? Set status. Set status. Get status. Where are you? Let's do a search on this. Get state. There we go. So that returns null or a status, which means that I can use this lovely magic data stuff that PHP has, data types, data types. There we go. Okay. Slurp of the tea before it goes cold. Right. Get status. That return. So now we should. in the manager. Can we pull that back? Yes, we can. Get ID. That should be the ID, yes, of that. So we need to check whether or not it is null. And if it is null, then we ignore it. And if it isn't null, then we add it. Of course, I've gone and manipulated and changed the actual entity here. So before I even delve into anything, what I'm going to do is, for my own sanity, because I don't want to break this thing, obviously, after all the hard work that I've done building it, let's just run the unit tests and just make sure that the unit tests will run, because I have just tweaked that. Boom, they all work. Okay, 78, that's good. Wonderful. Okay, let's go back to that. Okay, so I need to check. If this is set. So this is where this is going to get quite lengthy, I think. So what we can do, come on PHP Storm, there we go, is we can put in an if condition here. So if, we can do if entity get status is an instance of status, then we do data, data, come on, without the P, is equal to entity get status, get ID. Okay, so that will get the ID from the status, and we're going to append it to here. Likewise, I need to manipulate this. This is the tricky part, because I need to add a parameter in here, and I need to add this into the insert query. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated, and I'm going to have to break various things out, which isn't ideal, but I think this is just the way we're going to have to go. So this is going to be very messy code. I do appreciate that to begin with, and then we'll refactor it afterwards, I think. Well, we'll have to, because this won't be great. So what can we do? Well, I guess the best thing we can do is above here. Let's do. Let's just have a data like that. What we can do is we can create an associated array. So we do reference. So this would be perhaps the field name. So we're going to do reference. And we're going to do entity get reference. And then we can do total. So these are all the things that should definitely be in the entity. So we're going to do get total. We're also going to do VAT, entity get VAT. Okay, awesome. My thinking is that we're going to loop through this data array. We can pull out the keys. Those keys are going to be here. This will be replaced by the keys, and then the values will be set at this point, and also the number of the keys will represent the number of the question marks. That's my thinking. Okay, so we have that. We have all of these things, which means that we can put this if condition underneath here. Yeah, there we go. So if get status instance of status, then we pass that in as status underscore ID. That is the field name. So field name and then field value. Okay. We can also manipulate. We can also handle this as well, the ID. So what we can do is we could do this. We could do if the ID is null. So if no, we're not looking at. If that isn't null, I should say. There we go. Then what we do is we put that in. So we do get ID. Sorry, we don't need this at all, do we? Or that. That just needs to be ID. And this is get ID. Like that. Okay, so now we've created our flexible data structure, data array, the things that the could possibly be in here, agnostic to whether it's an insert or whether it is a an update. So now what we need to do in our ginormous method here, we need to do a for each loop. Let's just work on the inserts for now. Let's do a for each data as field, and then we're going to do value or field value. I should put in. Yeah, let's just leave that. Let's just leave that. We're also going to have SQL up here, SQL. That's just going to be a blank string for now. Then what we can do is we can say that we have, what we need to do is we need to build out this. So this blank string above is going to be the insert into Invoice. Then what we need to do is we need to have values is equal to a blank string. And we also need to have fields as well. So this probably isn't the most efficient way of doing it, but this is just, you know, let's just build it first, and then let's make it a little bit easier to read later. Okay, so we're running that query. These are the values. These are the fields. We're looping over the data. So we can do fields first. We're going to concat that to be reference, total, and VAT. So let me think about this. We could, if we wanted to, we could implode this, because we need to be sure that we're putting in the comma at the right point. Yeah, let me just have a think about that. What's is it implode or is it explode? I always get those two muddled. It's an implode. So we're imploding, and we're imploding by a comma, and with the pieces of the array are the array keys of data. Okay, so that will get our fields. And of course, we need to do that, and I think we need to do that. I think, maybe. Let's try it. I think this is calling upon a unit test to build this, rather than me try and hack it up. So I'm thinking that would become our fields, right? So we're going to implode that with all of this stuff. And then we need to have the values would become a loop for each one of those data bits and pieces. I think what I'm going to do before I commit this to code, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a unit test just specifically for these sections. So I'm going to because I'm playing around with the code a little bit here. So let's just copy the connection test, and let's just copy that, copy, control, paste that in. Thank you. Let's do query test. Right, so it's not we're not going to instantiate anything here. We're just going to play around and manipulate this. Whoa! What's happened? Query test. Okay, so we don't need to worry about any of this stuff. So this is db query. Okay, so let's just mimic the possibility of this thing. So we scroll over to the invoice manager. The possibility of this thing is that we pull out all of this stuff, and I'm just going to copy all of that into the query test, and we're going to paste that in. We're not going to worry about the actual entities, because this is, we're only dealing with the database here. So let's do foo 1 1. We don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about that. We can also put this up here. So ID, status ID is 4. I think it was beforehand. So that's fine. We're also going to add the ID in. So this is the sort of like the penultimate set of values for this. So this is going to be, say, 5. It doesn't make a difference. I'm not going to save anything at this point. This is just a unit test. I just want to have a series of data to do this, and then I'm going to construct the string, and then I'm going to make sure the string is correct. So the string should, if I was to do, so this is the expected string. Expected is equal to this. The expected string at this point would be would be that one. Then when we go into here, the expected string is this. Copy. Query test. Whoops. There we go. That is the expected string. If we get that back in a test, then we know that we've done well. This expected string. So for somehow I need to convert that into this, and obviously that needs to be total VAT. That needs to be status ID, and this also needs to be ID as well. And we also need to put in 2 more question marks here. Question mark, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right. So that string is the string that I would like to construct from this data array. Now, I'm very I'm aware that the data is going to be manipulated at very different points depending on whether you've got a status ID, whether you've got an ID, customer, whatever. But I just want to create a flexible mechanism that will construct this string. So that's what we're going to start with. Insert into. And then we're going to do the fields like this, perhaps, I don't know. So this will become SQL, and then we're going to concat that to fields, and then we're going to concat that to values, yeah? And then we're going to finish all of this with a semicolon on the end. That becomes our expression, and then we need to do is it this assert same. The expected one is I should do this obviously above. So that's the expected, and then we're going to pass in the SQL here. Now I obviously need to equal that to, get it right way around. Okay, so that is what we are expecting, and we can use the test as a way of just making sure that the logic is right. I know for a fact that this is going to fail straight off the bat because all of this stuff is right. But when you're dealing with some complex sort of string bits like this, it's always good to have something to test. You don't want to be building this stuff and then sort of like checking the database. Did it actually go in? Did it not go in? Where's the SQL? And then having to have a look at all the error logs and all this lot to find that you've actually missed out a comma somewhere or whatever. If you've got something that can actually construct this in a unit test, then so be it. Let's just run this and see what's wrong. There's going to be a lot, I'm sure. So let's just run this. Let's go to run. And then my thinking is that once we have this sorted, minus G, once we have this sorted, we are then able to, oops, I didn't actually put the group in. We're then able to put this into a utility class, perhaps, where we just pass in an array of data and then perhaps the table name, and then out pops this whole string that is constructed based on the values that we give it. So we are moving more into the restructuring over refactoring type mechanism. So this needs to be db -query. I do need to just keep an eye on the time. Oops. I do need to keep an eye on the time because obviously I do need bits and pieces done today, obviously. I am a freelancer after all. I do have freelance work to get on with. Closer and closer we get to working hours. So let's run this. Couldn't pass the test. That's never good. On line 47. So there's a problem here. Why is that? Don't know what that they can all go. Couldn't pass the test. Is it because namespace is entity? There is an error. If you have a look on here, there is an error. What's going on here? If I have a look on the thing, expected a semicolon. Oh, yes, you did. Yes, my apologies. You expected a semicolon. There we go. Are you happier now? Let's run this. Yes, you are happier now. We obviously have the failure, but the best thing about this, of course, is that we actually have the output. So this is the expected, which is this one here. This is what we've actually sent it. So yeah, can you see that this is not what I expected at all? So it's not. We're not putting this in as glue. So that's cool. That should be good. Values needs to be in. If you insert into these, need to be the field names. Need to be in brackets. So we can do bracket dot and then. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just do it at this point here. That's probably easier to read. There we go. Right, let's run this again. So, you know, this is great because it gives you a quick feedback loop. Okay, so we have reference, total, VAT, status, and ID, but notice that these need backticks in, and we don't have backticks. So let's put those in. So the backticks would go, I think they would go here and maybe here, I think. Let's try that again. So we have a backtick on the back of this one. We have a backtick on both sides on this one, both sides on this one, both sides on this one, and one side on this one. Which means that I need to have a backtick at this point, and I need to have a backtick at this point. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing, yeah? And it gets a little bit confusing, a bit complicated. But by having this test, it means that we are slowly building out something that should work. Okay, so we have insert into invoice, and the best thing about this as well is you can see that it lines up. Apart from this one, of course. Why is that not lining up? Oh, that's because I've added another one here. Again, another great way of testing this and ensuring that you're actually, you know, this is like, it's almost like having a developer behind you going, you've gone and, you know, added another colon or backtick where it shouldn't have done. Okay, so we've now dealt with that. Awesome. Next, we're going to deal with the values. So values needs to be like that. So we're going to pass in a space. Is it, yeah, value, run this. Okay. The values need to be also in these thingies. I just want to double check that doesn't look like it's lined up correctly, does it? So that's good. I think there is an extra space going on. It doesn't look completely lined up. Although that does look like there's a space. That looks like there's a space. Okay, let's just... here we go. There's a space here, and there isn't a space here. Okay, so we do insert into, there needs to be SQL. That needs to have a space like this. Let's run that. That's better, isn't it? So we invoice, reference, total, VAT, status ID, ID, value. Now we can work on this thing here. So we need to count the number of these things, and we need to create the fields or create the values. So, excuse me. So, what we could do, let's have a little play. Let's have a look. Can I do range start to end? So to create an array containing a range of elements. No, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to create an array. No, let's go back to I could do a for loop over those, and then put in that. Or I could do an implode. There's no need at all to get the actual field names themselves. Although I do think it's handy to have that. Let's just do a for loop. For data. Bear with me just a second. Let me just see. Okay. For each data as key as value, whatever. And then we can do something like values is equal to this. We could do values question mark douche, like that. Actually be like this, I think. With a check that if this isn't the first one, then we don't add that. So we could do for each data as value, or for I in blah blah blah. For I, which is less than the count of, whoops, not this count, count of data. Let's start that with I plus 1. I equals 0. I is greater than, less than, sorry, count of data. Whoops. I plus plus. Something like this. And then for every one of those, we then add this so that we could do if I is greater than 0. No, that's not. We're not working in Python. If I is greater than 0, then what we need to do is we do values equal that to a comma, and then we add the comma, and then we add the question mark, and then what we do is value. That's not right, is it? That's not clever. I've gone and that should be. Whoops. Copy that, put that at the top, and then that's that, and then we have values there. Okay. It's all looking a little bit complicated, isn't it? But let's see if this runs, this putting in the values at this point. Let's see. Okay, so we are inserting into here, but we're not putting in the value for some reason. What's going on here? For I is equal to 0, I is less than the count of data, and then I plus plus. For I, blah, 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 then we do values like so. Let me see, why has that not actually been put in? So we have values. There we go. There we go, and that's done. So that monstrosity of code now creates this output. So I think what I'm going to do in the next stream is I'm going to convert this into some sort of utility class, and then I'm going to add this to the to the mechanism of inserting and updating, and we're also going to play with perhaps putting in the table name, and we're also going to change whether it's an update or an insert when we've got the ID. This means that this is extremely flexible now. This is a very bespoke, well, yeah, okay, it's a bespoke way of creating a query, but this query is now extremely flexible for all the managers. So this mechanism, which will be starting basically from here all the way to here, so this bunch of code we can put into a function. We can pass in the data array, plus we can pass in the table name, plus we can pass in whether it's an update or an insert, and then that function should spit out the SQL, and then we can call upon this from here, right? So when we're actually constructing, these are the tests. Sorry. Here we go. So when we're actually constructing the actual query in both in the invoice insert and update, plus the customer. So here, this is how the customer is working. We can put this in, and this will be agnostic, I suppose you could call it, to the thing that you're actually building, the thing that you're actually creating the query. So basically what I've done there is I've just created a query builder or a query runner or some sort of mechanism that constructs the query based on the values that you supply. So we'll still be building out this data array, but then we'll be passing it to a utility class that returns the SQL. And I guess that's the first sort of part of the whole sort of refactoring, restructuring process of this, which makes this a little bit more uniformed across the platforms. The best thing about this, of course, is that we now have database tests on both the invoice, on the customer, and on the status that will back this up, because we already know that they work. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the next stream. I mentioned briefly earlier that there is a website, or there will be a website that will host each one of these streams, plus the actual course for FreeCodeCamp itself. This website is built on Gatsby.js. I'm yet to publish it. There's a couple of niggles that I need to work through. I'm learning Gatsby.js as I'm doing this, so there's a couple of things that I need to sort of just brush my knowledge up on. This site will be hosted on Hostinger, and Hostinger is sponsoring the streams, these live streams, and Hostinger has a fantastic deal on at the moment. You can get a hosting package plus a free domain name at 82% off if you go to hostinger.com/Peter Fisher. And if you use discount code Peter Fisher, you will also get a further 15% off. So that's 82% off your web hosting plus a free domain if you use hostinger.com/Peter Fisher. Plus, if you put in Peter Fisher again in the discount code, you get a further 15% off. So, that it's an amazing deal. It's an amazing deal, and I've used Hostinger before. They're very reliable. They're extremely affordable. They're very good. So do check that out. If you've got a project that you want to create, they're fantastic for things like portfolios. If this deal is so good that if you've got a portfolio that you need to put out, if you're a junior developer and you want to create a portfolio showing your skills before you go to an interview perhaps, then that would be fantastic. Or if you've got other big projects that you want to play with, Hostinger is a great hosting company. So that's hostinger.com/Peter Fisher. Again, that's 82% off plus a free domain. And if you use the discount code Peter Fisher, you get a further 15% off. Also, we have the podcast. Podcast goes out every Friday. That's howtocodewell.fm. This is where I interview awesome, fantastic, thought-provoking guests around web development and around programming. And we've had some extremely interesting guests on the show, talking about many, many different things, aspects of web development, different projects of web development, different things to do with web development. They could be hiring managers, they could be team leaders, they could be coders, developers, junior developers, senior developers. I've had people from Amazon, I've had people that are coming soon from Google. So do check that out if you haven't done so already. That's howtocodewell.fm. It's available on Spotify and iTunes and all of that good stuff. It's a video and audio podcast, so you can actually watch these interviews on the How to Code Well YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed there, also do check that out. I will be tweeting all of this stuff and when the next stream is on Twitter. So do check that out too. That's at How to Code Well. It's at How to Code Well on all the things: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of that good stuff. I am a freelance developer, full stack developer. I need to shoot off and I actually need to write some code for clients. But thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding. Again, if you've got any questions, then do let me know. Links to all of those good things are in the description down below. Cheers. Have a good day, and I'll see you on the next stream. Bye.